This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopia and China suspend the use of Boeing 737 MAX 8. Algeria's embattled President Bouteflika believed to have returned to the country from Switzerland. And we continue with our coverage of China's annual political season. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. For those of you joining us across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines. In business, Libya restarts its biggest oil field, aiming for a near 6-year high production. And what the Egyptian government is doing to enhance eye care services. Let's start with the latest developments from the Ethiopian Airlines 737 that crashed on Sunday. The accident killed all 157 people on board. In response to the crash, China and the Ethiopian Airlines have grounded all planes of the same model. The Ethiopian Airlines airplane, which was bound for Nairobi, Kenya, crashed minutes after takeoff. China's civil aviation regulator will notify airlines when they can resume flying the planes after contacting the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration and Boeing to ensure flight safety compliance. Well, for more on this story, we have Coletta, who joins us from Robert Nagila, who joins us from the Jomo Kenyatta Airport in Nairobi, and Coletta Wanjohi, who is on standby from Addis Ababa. Thank you both for joining us here live on Africa Live CGTN. Let's start first with you, Coletta. What have the initial investigations revealed about the Ethiopian Airlines crash?
Well, Richard, it's still early to tell, and the chief executive officer of Ethiopian Airlines yesterday evening, while giving a press conference, said that he would not determine how long it would take for the initial results of the investigations to happen, because as we understand right now, a committee has been formed, which is the Ethiopian Airlines, Ethiopia Civil Aviation, and the manufacturer Boeing, and these three plus other international agencies are expected to meet and start investigations. So it's still at its initial stage, and what is happening now is the Ethiopian Airlines, alongside other people are helping out, are trying to get bodies out from the site and also retrieve the debris. And probably these are the things that will assist with investigation.
All right, let's turn our attention to you, Robert. We understand that Ethiopian Airlines has grounded its Boeing 737 MAX 8 fleets. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, absolutely. We received that information this morning. Now, Ethiopian Airlines in a tweet says that this is basically a precaution as they are yet to establish the cause of this particular incident that occurred on Sunday, in which 157 passengers and crew members of flight ET302 lost their lives after that plane crash just outside the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa. Now, we've also seen a similar move from the China's Civil Aviation Authority, the regulator, also withdrawing the fleet of the same model of aircraft. Now, one of the reasons that Ethiopian Airlines has done this is because this is the second incident involving the same model of aircraft in about 6 months to crash. And the circumstances surrounding the accident, the plane crash itself, appear to be similar. However, we have to wait for investigations to establish what actually caused the flight. But Ethiopian Airlines, as I have said, say that this is simply a precaution until they can establish what exactly caused the accident.
All right. Coletta, we can imagine that the families of those who perished need all the support they can get. Can you tell us about the kind of support they have been receiving from those in authority?
Well, as we are speaking now, at least for the many who are 9 Ethiopians, because we know in Ethiopia there were 17 who perished. For those people, at least they're at home. But for the other nationalities, we've got people who are coming in. Some people came in yesterday, and a big Kenyan delegation, or a big group of Kenyan families, we are told, will be arriving much later tonight. And after that, they'll be housed at the Ethiopian Airlines hotel around at the same place where Ethiopian Airlines can easily reach to them, give them updates, and because everybody is just looking for information about where the loved ones are, and some people are saying the sooner they get the bodies of their loved ones, the sooner they'll get out of the country and go and make burial arrangements. So for now, Ethiopian Airlines has also put up, set up a toll center, and also a center where people can walk to around the airport just to go and inquire. And it's also working closely with the embassies in Addis Ababa. Most of the embassy officials are walking to the airlines offices to ask. There is a specific officer that has been put there, and officials who are giving updates and information to different embassies who are trying to look for their nationals. So it is an all-round operation, a 24/7 operation, and Ethiopian Airlines hopes that as soon as possible it will be able to retrieve all the bodies, hopefully, and give the bodies to their relatives.
All right, thank you, Coletta, for that update. Right back to you, though, Robert. The Kenyan Transport Ministry has been giving a briefing about the accident this morning. What should we expect from Kenyan authorities going forward?
Oh, that's a...
All right, we apologize for that break in communication. We'd like to thank Robert Nta, who reports from Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, and also Coletta Wanjohi for her update from Addis Ababa. Moving on, earlier we interviewed the CEO of the Ethiopian Airlines, Tewelda Gabra Mariam, and he told us a lot more about the tragedy. Let's take a look.
Mr. Tewelda, first of all, on behalf of CGTN, we would like to express our condolences. Tell us about what is really you are doing after the crisis happened, the crash of the plane.
Well, today is a very sad day for all of us, for our passengers who were on ET 302 from Addis to Nairobi. It's a very, very unfortunate accident. We have already set up an emergency center here at headquarters. We have also family assistance at the airport in Addis, and another family assistance center in Nairobi. That's the destination, and unfortunately, most of our passengers, 32 passengers were Kenyans. So we are also setting up similar family assistance centers in Canada, UK, France, Germany, and other areas. At the same time, we are operating smoothly. The operation is running very smooth, and I take this opportunity to express my deepest sympathies and condolences to the families, friends, and relatives of our passengers and crew. So, we don't know the cause of the accident. We will comply with all the international regulations. The aircraft manufacturer Boeing, American NTSB will come, and the Ethiopian Civil Aviation. These are the two mandated bodies to investigate, and as an airline will be fully supporting and cooperating with the investigation, and we will know the exact cause. Well, we have more than 300 flights a day, and it's a very safe airline, and the operation is running very smoothly. This is a very isolated and unfortunate accident, and as far as our operation is concerned, it's running very smoothly with no delay at all, and very smooth operation, and we will continue to do that.
Responders are racing to search for the plane's black box. The data recorder may hold the key to what caused the deadly accident. Ethiopian Airlines has asked China's Railway 7th Group, which was undertaking a Chinese-invested project nearby, to pitch in, given the area's low accessibility and poor transportation infrastructure. Responders say pieces of the wreckage were scattered across an area as large as 10,000 square meters due to the force of the impact.
We arrived at the crash site only to find the scattered pieces of wreckage. It's a tragic scene. The plane crash left a big crater. At present, we're conducting the search work within that crater, as we have to dig there to get a whole picture.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry has expressed condolences to the families of the 8 Chinese victims on board the ill-fated flight, saying all necessary assistance will be provided.
Local leaders are highly concerned about this air disaster involving Chinese citizens. The Foreign Ministry and the Chinese Embassy in Ethiopia have begun providing services accordingly. The embassy has made contact with the families and is assisting them in any way they can following the aftermath. According to the latest update, the 8 Chinese victims have been identified. 4 of them were on business trips, 2 were UN staff members, and 2 were tourists from Zhejiang and Liaoning provinces.
A total of 13 Arabs were on board the Ethiopian Airlines plane. 6 of them are from Egypt. Cairo says it's coordinating with the Ethiopian government to receive the bodies of the victims. Here is Adel El-Maraki with more.
7 Arab nations were among the 35 countries who had lost citizens on board Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti, Saudi Arabia and Yemen each had 1 citizen in this tragic crash. Morocco mourned 2 citizens, and Egypt has lost 6 people on Sunday. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry had contacted the victims' families, sending the country's deepest condolences. In an official statement, the Egyptian spokesperson of the ministry said the Egyptian embassy in Addis Ababa is following closely with the Ethiopian authorities the flow of investigations. Cairo hopes the bodies of the victims will be located and identified soon. Families here are waiting desperately. Proceeding with their loved one's funeral will help easing their grief. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The Boeing 737 has been involved in a number of crashes. The Ethiopian Airlines crash is the second in 5 months involving a 737 MAX 8, the newest version of the plane. In October last year, a Boeing 737 MAX crashed into the Java Sea shortly after taking off from Jakarta. All 189 passengers and crew on board were killed. Last May, a Boeing 737 crashed shortly after taking off from Jose Marti International Airport in Havana, killing 112 people. Only 1 passenger survived that crash. Still on our top story, investigations into the possible cause of the crash are currently ongoing, with experts expected to release their findings soon. Our reporter, Daniel Arab Moy, has more on this story.
Tragedy has left a track of grief for the families of the 159 passengers and airline crew who were aboard the ill-fated Ethiopian airline. There seems to be no possible way to process the tragic incident that has left the aviation industry in shock. The Boeing 737-800 MAX is reported to have taken off at 8:38 a.m. local time from Addis Ababa Bole International Airport and lost contact at 8:44 a.m. on Sunday. At the beginning of the United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi, UN officials observed a minute of silence for the Ethiopian airline crash victims.
Let me first join Minister Kisler in expressing our deepest condolences to the victims and everyone affected by the tragedy of the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Honorable Minister Sim Kisler, Minister of Environment for Estonia and President of the 4th UN Environment Assembly, my colleague Maimuna Mod Sharif, Acting Director General of UN Office in Nairobi and Executive Director of UN Habitat, the Honorable Minister of Environment of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Mr. Keriako Tobiko.
The last major incident involving an Ethiopian Airlines passenger plane was in January 2018 when a flight from Beirut went down, killing 83 people and 7 crew members. But with so many unanswered questions over what could have happened to the Boeing 737-800 MAX, hundreds of families continue to demand for more information surrounding what exactly went wrong. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way, including. We continue with our coverage of China's annual political season. And Algeria's embattled President Bouteflika believed to have returned to the country from Switzerland.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
For lucrative economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
From Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika reportedly arrived back in the country on Sunday. He is believed to have headed to his residence in Algiers after spending 2 weeks in a Swiss hospital. Bouteflika suffered a stroke in 2013 and has rarely been seen in public since then. The arrival of the 82-year-old Bouteflika comes amid massive demonstrations demanding he withdraws his bid for a 5th term as president in April elections. An Algerian government plane believed to be carrying President Bouteflika took off on Sunday from Switzerland. Vote counting is underway after residents of Guinea-Bissau participated in legislative elections, hoping to put an end to a protracted leadership row in the country. According to the head of the ECOWAS observation mission, Kadra Desiree, polls closed at 17 GMT and voting passed off without any queer incident observed. Desiree says the voters were calm and very disciplined. The Guinea-Bissau President Jose Mario Vaz has expressed contentment with the whole process. Vaz has previously appointed a series of prime ministers, but none garnered sufficient support to achieve a parliamentary majority. Meanwhile, partial results from governorship and state houses of assembly elections in Nigeria have been announced. Full results are not expected until Monday. CGTN's Samson Omali has the latest update from Jos, north central Nigeria. Let's take a look.
The partial results released has shown that the local election is a straight fight between Buhari's All Progressive Congress Party and the main opposition People's Democratic Party. Saturday's election was marred by intimidation by the military, violence, murder and burning of voting materials in some states. In Jos, Plateau State, north central Nigeria, one election official died while several others sustained injuries from a bus accident while conveying election materials at the end of ballot.
Really, I can't really explain what happened. But what I would just say is recklessness and overdriving, that was just exactly what happened.
The election body has maintained its neutrality in the governorship election despite accusation by some political parties of bias.
We want to assure everybody that their votes will count because we are an unbiased umpire. We have as our mandate to ensure free, fair and credible election.
I urge you to maintain calm.
State governors in Nigeria are among the most powerful politicians in the country, hence the competitive nature of these local elections.
A governor is a leader of a state, and that is the grassroots. Nigeria is a federated state, and each state that is federated has a governor to govern them, which means it's a grassroots thing.
The Constitution allows the governors to impact their states in different ways, particularly under the concurrent legislative list, where they can legislate on matters of education, agriculture, health, and the rest.
From the election result released so far, domestic election observers say the low voter turnout witnessed in many states of Nigeria during the governorship election may be as a result of the presidential result, which went the way of the ruling party. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
And to China's annual 2 sessions in Beijing now, the Minister of Ecology and the Environment, Li Ganji, has praised the country's efforts at fighting its chronic air pollution problems, saying its policies were beginning to see some positive results.
In 2018, the proportion of days with fairly good air quality in 338 cities in China was 79.3%. That is an increase of 1.3% year-on-year. The annual average concentration of PM2.5 has decreased by 9.3%. The density of PM2.5 in the Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei region, the Yangtze River Delta in eastern China, and the Fenway Plain in northern China decreased by 11.8%, 10.2%, and 10.8% respectively. In Beijing, there is a 12.1% decrease.
The minister said China was focusing hard on environmental protection, adding that the country's policy of high-quality growth was an important part of this effort. He said China was using all its resources to tackle the problem, including money, education, and technology, and that the government would provide 60 billion yuan towards the fight this year, an increase of about 1/3 on 2018. The minister also mentioned the Yangtze River Delta region there, and the health of Asia's longest river is certainly a concern for the many people who depend on it for their livelihoods. This is also a key topic at the political meetings in Beijing. In this edition of CGTN Listens, our reporter Xie Ruixue sat down with a number of people from Wuhan, a major city on the river, and got their thoughts on how the iconic waterway could be better protected.
Hello, welcome to this edition of CGTN Listens. I'm Xia Ruixue. Today we're in Wuhan, a city located along the middle reaches of the Yangtze River. The river is the 3rd longest worldwide and is the busiest inland river in the world. We call it a golden waterway. But how to balance the economic development and environmental protection remains a big question. Joining us to talk about this today are Mr. Zhong Zhengrong from Wuhan Municipal Development and Reform Commission, Mr. Wang Hongzhu, a researcher at the Institute of Hydrobiology of Chinese Academy of Sciences, Ms. Huang Huan, an English teacher at Wuhan No. 49 High School, and Ms. Liu Xuan, a volunteer with Wuhan Volunteers Association of Lake Savers, an outreach group. Welcome to you all. Ms. Huang, you are a local resident. You have been living here for more than 30 years. Can you recall what the city and its rivers and lakes were like in your childhood and what happened later?
When I was a kid, there were many lakes in Wuhan. So that's why Wuhan is called Thousand Lake City. And afterwards, I think to push the pace of the city construction, a lot of lakes have been filled in to create more space for the city construction. So consequently, every time there was a heavy rain, the streets were more likely to be waterlogged because of the poor drainage system. Yes. So I think over that years, My city, Wuhan, was highly developed, but at the cost of a healthy living environment.
Well, Mr. Wang, you have been doing research on the environmental protection of the Yangtze River for many years. What's the current situation and how bad is it?
The Yangtze River system is now facing two ecological crises. The first one is the water shortage due to pollution. Many lakes and reservoirs, as well as some river segments, have been seriously polluted. So for some cities and villages, there are not enough clean drinking water source. The second crisis is the biodiversity loss. About 30% of fish species of the Yangtze River are endangered.
Ms. Liu, you are a volunteer who is fighting to protect the water. What are their biggest difficulties when doing it?
Not so many people are aware that we are facing a very serious situation. I think that is a major difficulty. Take the Eastern Lake channel, for example. The quality of them, but they won't listen.
Mr. Zhong, what specific measures has Wuhan government introduced?
We started with a crackdown campaign along the Yangtze River. Since 2016, a total of 227 illegal docks along the 145-kilometer bank have been demolished. The illegal sand excavation activities were terminated. Then we worked on curbing the dumping of wastewater along the Yangtze River. The latest technologies are now being used to monitor all sewage outlets and help trace sources of pollution. So far, we have appointed 2,699 river and lake chiefs who have played a significant role in improving the quality of the city's water.
That's a huge amount of work. It must require coordination efforts across the state ministries, provinces, and departments along the Yangtze River. So is it hard to break down the administrative barriers to work with various parties directly on the restoration work?
A joint administrative office was established in Wuhan, which developed a clear roadmap and timetable for the environmental protection of the Yangtze River. The office is to break the local protectionism and ask relevant departments to make concerted efforts to solve environmental problems.
What do you think is the best way to balance the economic development and the environmental protection?
Wuhan used to be a heavy manufacturing base, which in turn brought it a great deal of pollution. Within the past decade, we have made efforts to promote supply-side structural reform. We keep upgrading and transforming its industries. Today, its optical fiber, automotive, and commercial space industries are thriving. Its GDP has increased. At the same time, the environment proves to be better. So I think economic structure and developments will determine whether or not we are seeing a better environment.
I think thanks to the properly planned city construction and the banning on the illegal buildings or chemical plants, some wharves and small restaurants alongside the Yangtze River and East Lake. I think the ecosystem of our city has been greatly cleansed and improved.
So, Mr. Wang, from your research, what are the biggest challenges for the future in preserving the ecological environment?
How to manage the Yangtze River system on the whole basin levels, how to develop the greener and greener ways. This is very, very important because our ecological problems is actually come from our extensive economy growth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. The Yangtze River Economic Belt covers 11 of China's provinces and municipalities and accounts for over 40% of China's population and GDP. Since 2014, President Xi Jinping keeps stressing a green development for boosting the economic growth within the belt. As many experts have said, we have made progress in ecological restoration and protection, but still, we have a long way to go. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm CGTN's Xia Ruixue. See you next time.
Africa is closely following the annual political sessions in China. China is the continent's largest trading partner, and some African economists strongly believe the outcomes of these sessions could have positive impacts for Africa.
Trade volumes between China and Africa have been on the rise. The Asian nation has invested heavily across the continent, setting up infrastructures and many thriving businesses. During last year's FOCAC summit, Beijing pledged $60 billion for projects in Africa.
Given China's weight and its importance to the African continent, Africans are becoming much more and better interested in these annual Chinese sessions because, no matter what one might say, China is now the new giant in the eyes of Africans. We often talked about France-Africa relations or Europe-Africa relations. Today, the real stake is the China-African relationship. From these two sessions, Africans expect a positive impact that they can enjoy in their daily lives through micro and macroeconomic benefits.
One of China's major initiatives that is of great interest to Africa is the Belt and Road Initiative. Once completed, the initiative will link major markets in Middle East, Central Asia and Africa. This will improve infrastructure development, trade and relations.
What we expect from China is to facilitate Africa's cooperation with the rest of the world through its presence, its involvement in Africa, and its participation in the fight against poverty and the promotion of industrialization on the continent. China itself admires its current cooperation with Africa. To Africans, a country that rapidly becomes the leading trading partner and foreign investor in a few years is praiseworthy.
African countries are hoping that during this year's political season, China will again favorably align its priorities for Africa in its foreign policy strategy. Chomhono, CGTN.
Reports just reaching us, Ethiopian State TV says the black box of the Ethiopian Airlines plane that crashed on Sunday has been recovered. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashed shortly after takeoff from the Bulletin International Airport in Addis Ababa en route to Nairobi. All right, time now for another short break. We've got your business news coming up. Here's a look at what's ahead. Coming up in business, Libya restarts its biggest oil field, aiming for a near 6-year high production. And a 49% stake in Rwanda's biggest cement maker is up for grabs.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's talk a bit of business. Output at Libya's largest oil field, El Sharara, is set to be restored to around 300,000 barrels per day in 2 weeks. The surge comes after the massive Libyan oil field recommenced operation following a long closure due to security concerns. According to the North African nation state oil company NOC, the closure of El Sharara last December caused a production loss of about $1.8 billion. Last week, the firm disclosed that it would restore the 20,000 barrels per day production capacity that was lost due to the vandalism and looting. El Sharara currently produces up to 135 barrels of oil per day. The Rwandan government is planning to put its 49% stake in the country's biggest cement maker, Semera, up for sale this month. For over 30 years of its operation, Semera has failed to meet the growing demand for cement in the East African country. As a result, Rwanda's trade deficit remains hurting, partly due to the import receipts on cement from neighboring countries. The firm, which is 51% owned by South Africa's PPC, has an installed annual production capacity of around 600,000 tons. and the remaining shares are co-owned by the government and a consortium of local investors, including Rwanda Social Security Board and Rwanda Investment Group. Uganda has launched its first bus assembly plant. The passenger buses are built by the Metu Zongtong Bus Industries in Kampala in partnership with the Zhongtong Company of China. The company hopes to cut down the cost of importing buses from outside the country. CGTN's Michael Bulletin has that report.
1, 2, 3, 4, go.
Uganda's first locally produced bus rolling off the production line. The bus was put together by locals, but with technical support from the Zhongtong Company of China.
I am implementing the Road and Belt Initiative of President Xi Jinping of China, which actually aims at lifting us. For example, if China is manufacturing a car, Uganda can manufacture a car. China can help Uganda to manufacture a car.
The plant has the capacity to fabricate and assemble about 20 67-seater buses every month. More than 30% of the materials used to assemble this bus have been sourced from the local market, and it's put together here in Kampala by Ugandan workers, with the move by some African countries to reduce the importation of used cars. The new vehicles market could rise rapidly on the continent. Most of the cars plying Ugandan roads are second-hand imports. Last year, the government banned the importation of vehicles older than 8 years, arguing that used vehicles are expensive to maintain, but are also the leading cause of pollution.
If you bring in very old stuff which just need to be disposed of, is it good for our environment? It's certainly not good. So if you take it away from an individual level, but you are looking at a generation as a country, where will you dump all this crap?
And this is the main inspiration behind Uganda's Metu Zhongtong Bus Industries.
If we can make this a vehicle in Uganda which is new, which is affordable, we help our people to drive new cars. It is improvement on our health, but also improvement on our industry to create jobs.
However, local car dealers say while brand new cars are desirable, the cost remains out of reach for many Ugandans.
The problem we're having here in Uganda is taxation. The taxes for the new cars are extremely high. We cannot afford, especially for ordinary Ugandans.
Each bus will cost just over $100,000, which is about $40,000 to $50,000 cheaper than importing a new one, depending on the brand and model. Outside Uganda, the bus company is looking to penetrate markets in South Sudan, Burundi, Rwanda, and the DR Congo. Michael Bulletin, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
And on to Somalia now, where an all-female-run center is empowering women with skills to start small businesses. WAMO Women's Development Organization offers free vocational training to hundreds of women in Kismayo and its surrounding areas. The initiative promotes handcrafted products while also encouraging women to increase their production capacity. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo reports. Let's take a look.
These women are singing while weaving mats and baskets at this women's center in southern Somalia. The all-female-run center is one of several of its kind in Kismayo that seeks to empower women with skills to start small businesses. Founded in 2014, WAMO Women's Development Organization has trained hundreds of women with various skills, including weaving, tailoring, cooking, and designing.
We train women with different skills, from hairstylists to cooks to tailors and to clothing designers. Women who have received training here have established business centers in the city and sustained their families. We opened the center 5 years ago and rely only on support from other local women in Kismayo and surrounding areas.
For years, weaving has been a traditional skill of the people in southern Somalia. Locally available products are combined together to create mats such as these, popular among many in Somalia. This center offers free vocational training to hundreds of women in Kismayo and surrounding regions. Women here are also trained on the importance of protecting the environment by creating environmentally friendly products using locally viable resources.
This basket is made from locally available plants that grow in our country. It is environmentally friendly, unlike polythene bags. It does not pose any threat to the livestock and the environment because it can easily decompose.
The center also serves as a local industry, supplying the local market with baskets, mats, and clothes designed in a traditional manner. Women also earn a living by selling colorfully designed fabric known as bathi. Women at this center still dye the fabric the old way by hand.
I train them in a group of 15 or 20. We tie the fabric in different patterns before placing them in different shades of dyes. After a few hours, they come out with different colors like the one I'm wearing now.
The initiative has also promoted handcrafted products while also encouraging women to increase their production capacity. Traditional artifacts are also available at the center. Women say the society must play a role in safeguarding the rich cultural heritage of the Somali people, and are now appealing for funds to expand their center so as to accommodate more women. Aziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to seek at least $8.6 billion in new funding for the construction of a U.S.-Mexican border wall. The request, which is to be unveiled Monday, would far exceed the $5.7 billion Trump had demanded last year. Democratic congressional leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer have decried the move, warning that Trump will experience another legislative defeat. Now, the latest move by the U.S. president is part of his spending blueprint for the 2020 budget year, which is set to begin on October the 1st this year. In a landmark decision, German regulators have accused Facebook of illegally collecting user data. The social media giant dominates the market with nearly 23 million German users. The 3-year investigation is one of the European Union's first cases concerning new data privacy laws and competition. CGTN's Natalie Carney has more from Germany.
Facebook is at risk of being defriended by Germany. The country's Federal Competition Office, or FCO, is accusing the social media giant of abusing its market dominance in collecting user data from third-party sources, including Facebook-owned WhatsApp and Instagram. But it goes much deeper than that, say internet experts.
Even if you don't press, just visiting this website and there's a like button on it. And data will be sent to Facebook at that moment.
This information can then be used to develop detailed, intimate personal profiles.
It's not just where you live, it's what you buy and what you are looking for in the internet. They can use this data, how you will vote, for example, or influence you, especially to vote a special person.
This same technology can be used to influence and nudge preferences, contribute to polarization, and basically the manipulation we apply for consumer behavior where the stakes are quite low can be weaponized to more pernicious ends.
Last year, Facebook admitted to improperly sharing the information of upwards of 87 million users with Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting firm that did work for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Following this, Europe's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, was enforced to restrict the way businesses collect, store, and export people's personal information. Facebook responded to this latest judgment, saying they were in complete compliance with the GDPR.
There are data protection issues that also they're exposed to, but this is not a ruling that's argued on those grounds.
And that's what makes this ruling even more compelling. It wasn't made by the Data Protection Commission, headquartered in Ireland, which is tasked with overseeing and implementing the GDPR, but rather by Germany's own Federal Competition Office.
Facebook, whose European headquarters are also based in Ireland, said the Data Protection Commission should be overseeing this issue rather than Germany's FCO.
They've countered that they're not a monopolistic or have a monopolistic position, but they were including other services like YouTube or even Twitter that are not direct competitors. So I doubt that argument is going to have traction.
The social media giant said they would appeal the ruling. If the decision is upheld, Facebook must then develop solutions within a few months to meet the watchdog's orders. Natalie Carney for CGTN in Frankfurt, Germany.
This is Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way after the break, including what the Egyptian government is doing to enhance eye care services.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. In Egypt, the government recently launched an initiative called Decent Life, which aims to provide basic needs for the underprivileged. Part of the program is focusing on eye care. It is targeting to provide 250,000 free surgeries and perform checkups for at least 4 million Egyptians. Here is Adel Al-Marki with more.
At the military hospital in Suez City, dozens are desperately waiting to hear their names called. Most Egyptians cannot afford to pay for their health care. Recently, a nationwide campaign has been launched to cater for those who have eye problems.
I had a hard time to get healthcare from regular government outlets before. I used to travel to many cities to get treatment. Now all my conditions are being treated for free. My diabetes, hypertension, colon problems, hearing, and now my eyes. I used to pay $100 monthly on healthcare, which I barely afforded.
Noor al-Haya, or Light of Life, that's the name the Egyptian presidency chose for this project. It aims to provide free surgeries for 250,000 Egyptians this year and perform eye checkups for at least 4 million citizens. Dedicated to the most underprivileged citizens, it has brought back hope for those who are in urgent need for ophthalmologist's intervention.
The campaign has literally made us see the light of life. This initiative is helping so many people like myself. They make the checkups, scans and tests for free, and I'm waiting in line for my surgery now. I can't imagine the speed by which the service is proceeding.
Checkup caravans visit patients in villages for eye checkups. Complicated cases are then diverted to hospitals for further investigations. Finally, those in need for surgery are scheduled for operation within 2 weeks of their caravan appointment.
In the first phase of the project, we aim to cure glaucoma and cataract cases. And so far, we've made 200 surgeries. We aim to reach 10,000 by the end of the year here alone.
NGOs, public service sectors and military hospitals are all serving Noor al-Haya campaign. Yet the armed forces medical facilities like these are the patient's most favorable destination.
The military hospitals are excellent. We have a medical center in our village, but they don't provide a decent service. The staff here are friendly and very helpful, but when we go to public hospitals in the civil sector, they treat us badly.
On average, we're doing 26 surgeries per day. We're currently receiving the first group of patients in the hospitals. The numbers are expected to increase, and we can accommodate up to 40 surgeries a day in this hospital. Soon the operation will expand to different cities in Egypt. And we have the most advanced equipment in the country, which makes it very efficient.
Noor al-Haya is filling a major gap in the Egyptian healthcare services. It is funded by Tahya Masr Fund, which is supervised by the Egyptian president. The campaign is part of Decent Life initiative, which aims to provide decent housing, food supply, education and healthcare for millions of Egyptians. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In order to give back to the local society, the Chinese Community Policy Forum in South Africa held a charity donation for the River of Life Daycare Center. The center is situated in East London's underprivileged community in South Africa. More than 30 children will benefit from this initiative.
The overseas Chinese community donated rice, flour, oil and kilt and crucial school supplies, much needed support for the children at the home.
This is not for the first time that they give us this love of donation that can be a support to our children, and that the children can feel good to know that there are some people that have a heart of helping other children. Then they can also share with others the love that the Chinese Police Forum have shown to us.
Since its establishment, the Chinese Cape branch of Chinese CPF in South Africa has not only contributed to safeguarding the personal property and safety of the overseas Chinese working and living in Eastern Cape, but also impact the local community.
Community Policing Forum is making donation to the daycare center in the local community. Actually, over the past years, the Community Policing Center has done a lot to help the social and economic development of a social community. And they also have made quite a few donations to the vulnerable groups, like a daycare center. So in this regard, actually, they have been trying to promote and carry on the greater tradition of benevolence, care, and a life, which we cherish so much in our culture.
And for the local underprivileged communities, every year the donation comes in to fill a great need. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away. Here's a look at what's ahead. South Africa wins their first Sevens title of the year in Vancouver.
Africa Live. Find